Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Adam Lippman, and he is the Director of Consumer Insights with Harbor Life Settlement. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Adam, kind of give us your background. Where'd you go to school, and kind of
Sure.
how'd you get where you are now?
Sure. I went to the University of Florida, and I was actually working at a cruise line before I got into what I'm doing now. It was the fifth largest cruise line in the world, but they went out of business after September 11th, and I was looking for something new. And my business partner received a cold call one day, actually, from someone in the life settlement industry looking for him to source some policies. And he brought it to me. We started talking about it a little bit, and neither one of us were in the position as financial advisors or anything like that to provide policies at the time, but we really loved the concept and the idea of helping people understand and maximize the value of their life insurance policies. So we decided to start up our own life settlement company, and that was 2002. We've been doing it for over 20 years now, and it's been amazing to see the journey that this industry is on. It's changed a lot over that time,
Right.
but it's really brought a lot of value to a lot of people.
So, you're saying that the life settlement industry. What can you explain to our listeners what life settlement means?
Sure. It's a life settlement is the sale of a life insurance an existing life insurance policy on the secondary market for a lump sum cash amount that's more than the cash surrender value in a policy, but less than the death benefit. On average, it's around 18 to 20% of the face value of the policy. And there's a whole industry of licensed buyers who buy these policies. And it's something that most people have no awareness of.
Yep.
Even people within the financial planning industries don't really have experience with it. Unfortunately, we live in a world where 9 out of 10 policies lapse or surrender before the death benefits are paid. And that's just simply because most policies, for the same reasons that they're initiated and written, things like protecting a mortgage or protecting a family, well, the mortgages get paid off, the kids grow up, unfortunately there's things like, divorces and deaths of a spouse, and basically the need for the policy changes over time. And when life insurance producers are trained, they're trained to annually review these policies and look at the needs of the consumer, but it's something in reality that doesn't happen very much. And most of these policies get put in a drawer and never looked at again.
Right.
They don't necessarily get funded properly. They don't get reviewed. And so 9 out of 10 times these policies are lapsed or surrendered for basically nothing, which is a real shame because there's a lot of value locked up in these policies now that there is a robust secondary market for the policies to be sold and for the owners to capture some of that value instead of just letting it go back to the life insurance carrier.
So basically, but these are only whole life policies or universal life that you're doing this with?
Well, any type of policy could qualify. Typically, it's a permanent policy like a universal life, whole life, index life, even term if it's convertible or if there's significant health impairments. Even term could work, but typically the most common are universal life policies. They have the flexibility for the investor who's coming in to take over the policy to manage and earn the return that they're looking for out of it.
Sure. So, I guess give me a scenario of this so people can understand a little bit better, how this goes into play. So, is there like an age range that you guys are looking at to be able to buy these policies, or how do you determine,
Sure.
what works for you guys?
So there's two main criteria that the team will look at to underwrite a policy. It's the cost of the policy moving forward, and it's the projected life expectancy of the insured. So it's just a shortcut way of saying, a shortcut way of saying that is maybe male 70 and older or female 75 and older, unless there are significant health impairments, and then the age can go much lower. And on the policy side, again, typically permanent policies, but anything could qualify, and it really matters the the efficiency of the policy, so how much it costs on an ongoing basis to keep that policy going. We know many of these policies are underfunded, which makes them more expensive at older ages, which makes it harder for families and consumers to keep the policies. And then, sometimes that can be, fixed by putting more money into the policy by the investor, and it can make sense for them to do that. Like I said, these policies typically sell for 15 to 20% of the face value, where when they're lapsed or surrendered, you're typically not getting anything near that. In fact, the industry statistics say that last year about $800 million was paid to consumers through life settlements, and those same policies would have only had a lapse or surrender value of about $100 million. So it's significantly better than what you can do by just turning the policy back in to the life insurance carrier.
So how, it's okay. I have this, policy, and you guys, you guys want to buy it from me. I want to sell it because I don't want to continue paying the premiums or whatever. How does, my kids are the beneficiaries. How does that work and get switched or whatever?
Sure. There's a extensive regulation for life settlements. It goes by state, so there are slight differences in some areas, but basically there's extensive licensing for the buyer. It's one of the only markets you could think of in this country where the buyer of something has to be licensed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the situation, and that brings a lot of consumer protections in. All the forms have to be approved by the state. There's mandatory disclosures, and we talk about all kinds of other options other than selling your policy. There's competency certification to make sure the person who's making this decision is competent to make it. The beneficiaries do have to acknowledge that this is happening. And, of course, life insurance is the best way to move value from one generation to the next. So we encourage them, if a family member can take it over, then that's probably better than selling the policy. But, often, next generation doesn't have the means or the desire to do that. So that's where a life settlement certainly can be. It's really an alternative to lapsing a policy, not to keeping a policy.
Right. So when you talk about that you're buying the policy, from me, and, you're typically giving more than what I would get if I turn the policy back in or cash the policy in. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, every case is unique, and it's underwritten not only about the details of the life insurance product that you have, but how it's performing based on the premiums you've put into it. But also the other side of the coin is that health projection, which is obviously very complicated and very unique to each individual. So based on those two factors, then the different investors will take a look at what they're willing to pay for a certain situation. And there's no obligation, there's no cost for consumers to go through this process and get an appraisal on their policy to understand the value. Sometimes it's a no-brainer, and sometimes it's a situation where, maybe we keep the policy going for a little bit longer, or now that we know what the value is, we're certainly not going to lapse it. We're going to keep it going because of that. And unfortunately, the big hurdle is that most people don't even know that it's possible to sell
Right.
an existing life insurance policy. Every year, about 8 million policies on seniors lapse or surrender, which is staggering when you think about the whole life settlement industry only transacts about 3,000 policies a year. So most of those 8 million people are not having this, giving themselves this opportunity, and their advisors are not giving themselves this opportunity to evaluate the policy and see what might be available to them. Again, it's staggering with $200 billion of those 8 million policies represent $200 billion of face value, and they're just evaporating each year.
Right. Now, is this a taxable event? When you guys buy it from me, are you going to give me a 1099 at the end of the year, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we're not tax advisors. You certainly want to go to a
Right.
qualified professional to go through that, but there is now regulations by the IRS where you can calculate, the amount that's above your basis and what you're going to end up owing. But I'll say that, typically that is you're still net ending up better off than
Sure,
lapsing it for nothing.
sure, sure. Um, obviously, this is, I mean, to some people, this is going to be quite surprising that, hey, there is this that is out there. Um, if somebody, you talked about it a little bit about, the longevity and the value that's in the policy and everything else. Um, is there, because again, sorry, people, are going to tend to be older
Hmm.
that you're probably going to want to buy the policies from and stuff like that. Um, and I know you said there's a lot of regulatory, things that are on it. Can you talk about that a little bit and how is it that if I'm whatever 70 years old and I'm trying to do this, how should I be looking to find a reputable company to do this that I know is going to go through all of the proper regulatory things to make sure that I guess this is legal and it's done
Yeah.
right and I'm not getting shortchanged.
It's a great question. You certainly want to keep this in mind with a big financial transaction like this. Life insurance policy is typically the second biggest asset after the home that any consumer owns. So it's a major decision and it's a major asset that you want to take care of properly. Each state does have different regulations, so you can certainly go to the departments of state or I'm sorry, the departments of insurance in each state and find out who the licensed buyers are. We at harborlifesettlements.com, we have lots of educational information and lots of there's a large industry report that kind of gives you a nice background foundation of what's happened in the industry and what is happening, developing into the future. There's a life insurance settlement association also that provides a lot of good educational materials to make sure people are approaching this in a thoughtful way. But I will say that, ask questions. Look at the Better Business Bureau reports. Are you licensed is the first place to start in whatever
Right.
state the person's in. But you want to talk to someone who you're comfortable giving, personal and financial information to, and make sure that they're, talk about their ethical standards and about how they approach the business.
How can somebody find out if because you're having to be licensed and stuff like that, if there's any negative complaints or anything against your license, how can they find that out?
You can talk to the Department of Insurance in your state, or you can look at the Better Business Bureau, sites like that to look for what other consumers have said about working with that company.
Okay. Um, Obviously AI is changing all of our industries and things like that. How do you see AI playing a role in your guys' industry at this point?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. We've been in the industry for over 20 years, and we're finally starting to see some of this technology come in. Data analytics and AI can really help streamline the whole valuation process and in on the back end, so that buyers know what they want to pay for a policy. This is driving efficiency for everybody involved, and it's interesting because AI is real benefit right now is looking at large amounts of information and being able to summarize it. So that is a type of problem that we look at when we're looking at medical records. There's no medical exam or anything like that when you go through a life settlement process, but we do gather all of your existing medical records from your doctors, and somebody has to go through them
Sure.
typically. But that is changing. We're using AI to summarize and to pick out the key dates and the key, measurements for different illnesses and things like that. So it's definitely helping to streamline that process. And on the policy side, these illustrations can get quite complex and many different scenarios can be run, and often the investors are deploying actuaries to really get into the fine details of it. So all these analytics can help streamline that as well, and we're trying to make this process much quicker and easier for consumers.
Right. Because I'm sure it's some of the people that you're dealing with this are going through financial hardship, and that's one of the reasons why they're looking at doing this. How do you educate them before, because again, I'm looking at that there's probably a process before you even get information from them to
Right.
move forward. How do you guys try to educate people, besides just say we got a bunch of stuff on our website? How,
Sure.
how do you guys try to educate people?
Yeah, because it is such a unique situation and a once in a lifetime situation for most consumers. It's a little different on the advisor side. They can, build up some skills and some contacts and everything. But we have calculators on the website where you can put in a couple of details about your situation and get an idea, because not everyone gets the average. The
Right.
the the range is actually much wider, from 1% to 60+% of the face value sales occur all across the map. So you want to put a little bit of information in there, and you can get just a broad perspective of what might happen. But that's really just the first step. We would like to encourage everyone to call us up, give us let us have a conversation. Let's take that calculator result. Let's talk a little bit more in depth. Of course, computers don't know all the nuances, so
Sure.
let's talk about your situation. Why are you even considering this? Are there other options on the policy? Maybe reducing the face value or converting the policy. Sometimes policies can have loans taken out internally. There's many different options that might make a lot of sense for a consumer before selling. So we want to kind of walk you through that process unique to your situation and your circumstances, and find out if it's a match, if it makes sense for you to consider this. And again, there's no obligation when someone does ask us to underwrite a policy and go ahead and look for offers. That is certainly not the same thing as saying I'm 100% selling my policy.
Sure.
It's just getting an appraisal. It's just finding out what the value is, just like you might do if you're selling a house. And when in a life settlement regulations, there's many consumer protections, including what we call a rescission period, where even after a consumer sells the policy and receives the money, there's a certain amount of time, typically about 15 days, where they can actually change their mind and return the money to get the policy back. So no one is, this is not a high pressure situation. This is more of a conversation. Let's see what if we have a meeting of the minds here, and if it makes sense for you and your family, then we help you through it.
What are some of the common mistakes that you see the consumer making when it comes to life settlements?
I mean, the biggest one is just the low awareness, and people lapse their policy without even considering a life settlement. Once you have overcome that hurdle, you certainly want to make sure you're working with a reputable, licensed buyer, and Harbor will help match you with good information there. You also, again, want to look at this as, what are all of my options? It's not just lapse or sell. There are other options. Sometimes reducing the face amount of a policy is a great option, because you can retain some coverage for your family, but reduce the premium payments that are, can be quite burdensome.
Right. I like earlier how you talked about, also looking to see if there's a family member they can pick up, the cost of it, to be able to continue this on. Which is, again, I think is another good way of doing this. Um, from more on the business side, how do what are the marketing strategies and the things like that you guys use, to help find people and to get the word out?
Great question, because consumers aren't often coming to advisors, asking
Right.
for it. So there's what we really like to do is encourage our partners, and we've seen a lot of success with them looking at their existing book of business. If you're doing reviews of other assets, if you're doing reviews of any part of the financial picture, let's consider what life insurance exists, what life insurance needs exist. Is there still a match there? Maybe you're overinsured, maybe you're underinsured, but those needs change often, and when the policy starts to get very expensive, which it often does at older ages,
Right.
it can you can get multiple wins by selling a policy, because not only do you get the cash settlement from the transaction, but you're no longer paying out those premiums. Often people will take the proceeds from the sale and buy a product that's more suited to their current needs. And I mean, that can be anything. Obviously, different advisors do that different ways. It could also be a vacation or a donation to your charity or whatever suits your situation. But it frees up that cash flow, and it really turns a latent asset. It unlocks that value.
Right. Right. Um, Adam, we've covered a bunch of stuff quickly here. What have I not asked you wish I had?
I think the most important thing is to have consumers and advisors talk about their specific situation, so people can always give us a call. The Harbor Life Settlements is 866-606-9459. We're happy to bring lots of educational materials you can read up and research, and when you're ready, we'll match you with a company that can help you appraise and sell the policy. It's really unique for every situation because of all the underwriting involved. And so we'd love to have those conversations and see if there's a fit.
Great. So Adam, give us your website again, so people can go there to check things out.
Sure, that's harborlifesettlements.com. And that we have the calculator and the industry report and many, many other resources on there for people to take a look at. And when they're ready, they can reach out and we'll start that conversation.
Great. Adam, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks. So this week, my guest was Adam Lippman, and he is the Director of Consumer Insight with Harbor Life Settlement. I'll see you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.